Hey, I want to do another video here on three of the six C's. These three are the core, okay? And if you learn and understand these and are able to apply these three concepts, you're going to be in a great position, okay, to not only succeed in my class, but also just in other classes and in creating texts. Again, you might not think that you're a text creator, but you are, because a text is, again, anything that communicates conversation, a meaning to somebody. It's got an author, a message, and an audience. Now if it shows up in a fixed format and is copyable and is replayable, like a song on the computer, a voice message that you saved on your phone, a text that you have sitting there in your phone, maybe a letter or a card you have tucked away in your drawer somewhere, a movie, a documentary, a book, a newspaper, a billboard. All of those fixed format can be accessed by a mass audience or just by an audience, can be replayed, can be copied. Okay, so I would actually call those documents, but I'm playing with terms a little bit. The point is, you make texts and you receive texts all the time, text with a capital T. So if you learn how to really recognize what's happening here, you know what's happening on an intuitive level, right? But if you can begin to recognize what's happening and then articulate it, you are going to be a better thinker, and you're going to be on a path where you can continue growing, because all of a sudden you kind of know what you're doing and how to analyze things and how to think about things. Okay, so let me give you these three C's here. I have a previous video that talked about the six C's, and the three here that I want to focus on are conversation, contribution, and creativity. Okay, so I really, the picture I want you to have in your head is literally a conversation that's happening. Let's have it be at a lunch table or something. Just get that nice round table, and maybe it's at a restaurant, okay, and put six chairs around it. And fill those chairs up with with people, and have them all get to talking about one topic. All right. So you know what I'm talking about. That typical conversation scene, right? Now, what if those people that were sitting there were actually talking in terms of maybe a documentary, a book, a magazine article, a journal article, a study, and their chair, if you will, or whatever, is an organizational website, and they're posting their study. But see, they're all looking at each other's work because they're very interested in the topic, and they're very interested in staying up to speed with what other people are doing with it, and what's the new stuff that's being discovered or challenged, or what's the new word in this conversation, right? So the conversation is actually your source work as you're learning your topic and you're figuring out who are the big voices or the main voices, right, that you want to work with. Now, you realize that as you're choosing a topic, you can come to a table, right, and maybe they're discussing one topic, maybe it's education. And that's a huge topic, isn't it? So maybe actually at this point, because these people have been at the table a long time, maybe they're talking about inner city reading abilities, or math skills. When you have a big city, it might just be math skills in relation to city size. They're like, hey, if you look at the math skills for graduating seniors from Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, whatever, and then you compare them to small cities, there's this difference or whatever. You see how they're really discussing, maybe reading skill for graduating seniors depending on the size of the cities. Okay, you see how that's a focused topic, right? And at that point, I want you to imagine another table where really the people on that table, that's what they're talking about. Now, that's a pretty focused conversation. And when you narrow your topic and focus your topic, you're trying to find that table that's like talking about that. So that's why it's worth looking at audiobooks, Googling it online and finding sources that are mentioned, trying to find it in academic databases, so that you can collect content and find out which people are actually sitting at that table and what are they saying, right? Um, so now as you're choosing a topic, right, you might go to that table and you might say, I don't necessarily want to be at this table. Maybe I need to go to another table. And you go and there's another table in that big room in the restaurant that's talking about, I don't know, sustainable energy or artificial intelligence or CRISPR. Should we be monkeying about with fixing the genome to eradicate disease? Or maybe they're talking about um, independent movies and how they portray race or homeless, the property and class divide in independent movies, as opposed to Hollywood, or their tables are all over the place, and people are having conversations about general topics or specific topics within that general umbrella all over the place. So it might be a good idea when you're picking a topic, not to pick a topic for which you can't find any table, because nobody is saying anything about that, even in a general way, you know. And it might not be a good idea to try to pick a topic where the table is too big. I mean, it's just there are too many voices. But anyway, it's very helpful to have the picture in your head of a conversation. Now, once you hang out at a table, right? Let's just say that you're standing up and you're not even sitting at that table, but you decided to commit to the table. You like this table, you like you like learning about what they're saying, and you're just soaking it up, right? There might come a point where you realize that you have to enter the conversation, right? So the conversation then there's an active aspect here. You can't be passive all the time. There's going to be a point where you're going to have to say something. You're going to have to come into this, right? So let's just suppose that, actually people kind of scoot over and someone else, the waiter brings a chair. Now I'm getting kind of silly with my analogy, but let's just say that there's actually an empty chair there, right? And that chair is for you, but you don't really have the right to sit down at it until you know how you're going to enter the conversation, okay? So let's talk about, because I'm telling you, you know how to do this. I want you to be confident about this, because you do know how to do this in a very intuitive and informal way, but the basic principles are the same. If you really did go to a restaurant and there was a table there and there was a chair for you, but you came late and they already had started the conversation, and maybe they were talking about the latest fashion fad or whatever, who knows? Maybe they're talking about the upcoming elections or, whatever, right? Unfortunately, at this time in our country, we're having a lot of tragedy in terms of natural disasters. So maybe they're talking about that. Or maybe it's man-made disasters with a lot of shootings are happening. Or maybe they're talking about that. Who knows? But they're talking about something, right? So if you pull up and if you sit down, because it's going to be awkward for you to stand, I'm going to kind of change that picture a little bit, but if you sit down, you don't just blurt out something, because you might not even be close to what they're talking about without first listening, right? And you don't try to, so first there's a period where you're just kind of listening. What exactly is going on here, right? What are they talking about? That's in one of my earlier C's. That's you're getting the content so that you can learn the conversation, right? But then there might be a time when you realize, okay, I'm understanding, I'm tracking, I'm getting it, and whoa, I've got a genuine question, right? And now that is a pretty good way of entering the conversation, isn't it? When you have a legitimate question, and so you throw it out there, right? Or you're not sure what someone means by that phrase, right? Okay, that's if you were just to kind of say, hold up, I'm not sure what you meant by that, Now that sounds like a question, right? But this is a question that someone can answer, just because they can give you an explanation as how they're using that term. So see, now that's a contribution. Now then you might say, well, there's a better way to use that term, or let's kind of limit it. So now your contribution is taking the form of a definition, right? You're presenting a definition to the table. Or if you feel like they have been talking a lot, but they have overlooked something, or they're missing a point, right? Your contribution might be that question that says, well, what about this? Because I don't see anybody addressing this aspect or this question. So sometimes your contribution is a legitimate question no one has answered yet, but you think it's important to voice. So your contribution is actually just focusing on how to frame this question right. Not even answering it, just framing it, right? Sometimes it's asking or providing a definition. Or sometimes somebody might be saying something and they have an idea or they have a general statement and they have like only one or two like examples to back it up, right? And then you might say, oh, I've got a lot of examples for that. So now you're bringing data. So that might be a way to get in there. You see what I'm saying? And you're sharing a common experience and you're adding to the number of experiences that back up this general assumption. So actually that's a data-driven approach. And there could be mixes of those, right? I mean, you might have a question or present a definition and also bring in some data. So you might be using two techniques at once. What I am saying is that there are techniques that we all know that help us enter a conversation properly, right? Now, some techniques that are never going to work is to not track with the complexity of the conversation. In other words, if all of the people at the table already know what something is, right? They already know, for example, how the NFL playoffs work. It does you no good to all of a sudden try to explain to them how those NFL playoffs works, or it could be anything, right? I mean, it does no good to bring information to the table that the people already have, right? They're just going to be like, we already know that. I mean, what are you doing? You know how it is. Let's say that you guys are talking about a song, right? And it's obvious that you've heard the song a lot and you're talking about what it means or how you like it or how you don't like it or whatever. And then someone comes up and it's like, oh yeah, that song, you know what the song's about? The song's about this, and just gives you the basic nuts and bolts about the song. That's not how you enter a conversation. They already know that. You should recognize what they already know, and then you don't have to provide that. You see what I'm saying? So that doesn't work. You know what else doesn't work is just copying what somebody says. Whether that you're straight up just copying what someone else says. So this person is saying something, and then you're like, oh, and you have 2 minutes of talking, and you say exactly the same thing. Now, in a real life conversation, you're just going to be met with blank stares or laughter. That's your penalty. But in academic writing, that's plagiarism, and you're going to be met with, some sort of sanction, or I don't know, low grade or something. But there's plagiarism that happens because you actually are trying to copy somebody and pass it off as your own. That's sort of a theft sort of thing. So that's ethically wrong. But there's also this redundant contribution, and which is not a contribution. These redundant utterances. It might happen, and it's not plagiarism. It's just happening because you don't know what you're doing in that conversation. So in order to kind of say something, you're just summarizing what three people have already said, and you're giving it to the table. Now you realize that's not a real contribution to that conversation. Those people know what they said already. They don't need you to summarize it for them. Now, if you had summarized those things and then you got up and left the table and went to someone who was outside the room and said, hey, I'm reporting on table 47. This is what they're saying. That's a contribution and a text that has a reason for existence for the person outside the room, but not for the table, right? So I'm not just bashing that, because every now and then there's a reason for summarizing or collating that, right? It might be a convenience thing. Google News does this all the time. A lot of people do this for convenience things. There might be, let's put this in a university context. There might be somebody that is going and transcribing the letter collection of some famous writer or producer or actor or a historian or politician or author, and they're actually going to the archive, right, in New York or Chicago or Tokyo, I don't know, and they're making the trip. They're plunking down the money. They're getting the letters of references in order to get into that archive room, and they're actually looking at the manuscripts or the holograms, the holographs, the originals, and then they're typing it out for you, right? And we're depending on their knowledge of translation or their editorial skills to be transcribing it perfectly or correctly, and then they bring it back to us. It saves us a lot of time. It saves us a ton of time. So, there are times when that is actually a contribution, but that's, you don't, if the table is already saying things, you can't just enter that table and then just repeat what they're saying, right? Now, I've got a lot of students that really want to do that. All they want to do is write an information paper. And I'm like, I guess I'll let you write the paper because I don't want to hold you back in your college career, but you're not developing as an author, because you know what? You can write all you want about the Titanic or Mount Vesuvius or Bitcoin or the electric vehicle, And every time Wikipedia is going to have a better page than you. It's going to have a better text than you. It's going to be more complete, more developed. The sourcing at the end is going to be fantastic. Why do I need your paper if I have Wikipedia? If I wanted to learn the basics about electric vehicles, you see what I'm saying? Or there might be a book out there that has already covered it. Energy for Future Presidents, okay? I mean, just there's the book that really covers it for me concerning electric cars and how efficient they are and how inefficient they are and that sort of thing, right? So unless you can do more than that book, why do I need you to write? I already read that. You see what I'm saying? So if I let you do that, I'm not challenging you enough to become a creative, original thinker, right? To really learn how to do contribution. I'm kind of letting you slide by with an assignment that is not as complicated as it should be. You're substituting an easier task for the real task. And of course, if you turn that in, I'm going to work with you. I'll probably give you a decent grade for it, but that's not the growth I want you to pursue. I mean, because you're not growing. You see what I'm saying? So it's conversation, it's contribution. Now, there are creative techniques for this. This is where creativity comes into play, okay? And I have a whole list of these. I have about 20 of these techniques that I will bring to this class. Now, I don't think I'll bring 20. I think I know 20 or more, but I can bring maybe 10. I think that's, given our time frame and just what we're trying to do here, I want to show you some techniques. And I'm going to give names to these techniques just so to help you think through them and remember them, okay? But these are creative ways to make a contribution, you know, to think in terms of or just creative ways to help you recognize where the contribution is waiting to happen. That's a better way to say it. All right. So there's a word that I think you should know. I don't want to insult your intelligence, but as a teacher, I just kind of have to assume a certain low common denominator. Sorry, but the word is lacuna, okay, and the plural is lacunae. It may be mispronounced. You might hear it as a different, slightly different pronunciation, but it's lacuna. Lacuna or lacunae are gaps. It literally means a gap. It's Latin for gap, okay, for lack, emptiness. All right. So when you look at a conversation, you're looking for the lacunae. You're looking for the gaps, right? And you might realize, oh, there's gaps in the data, or there's gaps in the definition, or there's gaps in the application. They're forgetting that the theory they're coming up with can actually be really incredibly applied to another area they're not discussing. So that's application. Or you might realize they're all talking about specific events, but if you abstract this, they're all really talking about the same thing. That's abstraction. You see what I'm saying? Right there, I've already given you 4 techniques, but I'll talk more about them later. I call them argumentative techniques, and I wish I had given them a different name. I'll explain why later, but that name's been with me for about 15 years already. So at least 10. It's a little too late for me to change, and it's growing on me. But anyway, that's creativity. All right, so conversation, contribution, creativity. Now I challenge you with that. I challenge you with that. All right, to spend time learning the contribution about your narrow topic, to try to look for the lacuna, so that you can realize what sort of contribution you can bring to the table, and then how to creatively pursue that and develop it and present it. All right, conversation, contribution, creativity. Now, if it doesn't work out for you, but you try, I'm going to honor that, and I'm going to make sure you get a good grade, okay? I can give you a half-written research paper to fill out at the end. I can give you some extra work so you do some extra essays. I can take information paper as long as you try to make it a contribution paper, okay? If you put in the work and you stay with me, you're going to make a good grade, all right? That's my promise to you, but I do want you to try to work with these 6 C's. That's in a different video, but of the 6, these 3 very important C's. Conversation, contribution, creativity. All right, let's go to it.